Collagen is the most abundant protein in your body and is essentially the glue that holds you together. In fact, after age 20, people produce 12% less collagen in their skin each decade. Collagen depletion is what makes you look old. Most collagen supplements do not provide the hydrolyzed bioactive collagen peptides that enable your body to digest collagen properly, plus it tastes badly. BioTrust gives you the 5 most available kinds of collagens that dissolve easily in hot or cold liquids with zero taste. You can add it to your coffee, tea, or smoothies, or even baked goods recipes. So to look and feel younger fast, go to www.healthwithbill.com. Good afternoon. I'm still reporting on the coup. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo appeared on Fox yesterday and spoke very directly about the threat the Chinese Communist Party represents to the survival of the United States. Show host Bill Hemmer asked Pompeo about Joe Biden's recent pronouncement that climate change represents the #1 threat to the United States. It took Pompeo less than 6 seconds to point out the real threat, but then, mysteriously, his feed was suddenly cut for several seconds.
Here is the tweet from the president. America is back, he writes. We rejoined the Paris Agreement. We're ready to rally the world to tackle the climate crisis. Let's do this. How do you rate the urgency of the climate today?
Well, Bill, everybody is for clean air and safe drinking water, but to place climate change on the list of threats that face the United States of America as #1 is an enormous mistake. The threat from the Chinese Communist Party, they're here, they're inside the gates. And other challenges we face, not the least of which is the crisis on our southern border today, that far outrank the urgency of climate change. You know, the other thing too, Bill, is when I see these summits, when I see these international commitments, these gab fests around the world, the only country that's likely to comply with its commitment will be the United States of America. They will take us for patsies. We will execute our climate change goals on the backs of working people, working men and women all across America, and other countries will laugh at us and they'll say, well, it just got a little too hard, it got a little too expensive, and we didn't make it. Maybe we'll get you next decade or the decade after that. It's a foolish proposition and one that will harm the United States of America.
Yes, just as before, the United States will be the only nation that fully keeps its climate change promises. Why? Because other nations know that the demands of the climate changers will cost a lot of money and will hurt their economies, and every dollar they can get the U.S. to additionally spend on climate change is essentially a dollar going into their pockets and out of the pockets of the American middle class. So the primary goal of this climate change meeting is to keep Americans in the dark about who will be footing the bill. Us. Pompeo speaks the truth, and he feels called to run for president, and if Trump decides not to run, Mike Pompeo would probably have my support, because no one else on the political scene speaks more truth with fewer words than Secretary Pompeo. Chinese President Xi attended the virtual summit meeting called by President Biden that was live-streamed on Thursday and Friday to a teeming audience of dozens. Pompeo cut through the pretense to explain that China in no way is seeking a win-win solution with climate with the United States. Notice that Pompeo uses the word hegemonic, the adjective form of my favorite word hegemony, which we use to describe the gambits of.
This isn't about a win-win solution between China and the United States of America. Whatever is in his head with respect to this is an attempt to create power and authority for the Chinese Communist Party and to harm the United States of America and to create hegemonic power across the world. He's not coming into a climate deal for the sake of either the United States of America or, frankly, for his own people either. This is an authoritarian regime that is Marxist-Leninist in its economic approach, and they have big designs on displacing the United States of America as the world's leading superpower.
Yeah. Tell it like it is, Mike. Hemmer then asks what is the biggest threat to the U.S. posed by bad decisions on the part of Biden. Without hesitation, Pompeo pointed to the lifting of the terror state designation from Iran.
To think that we might lift terror designation on the world's largest state-sponsored terror is just befuddling. It puts real risk on our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines all around the world. It puts risk on those of us here at home as well. You talked about the Russians as well. I think these are collectively a sign that deterrence, the model that we had, we put America first at the top of our national security agenda. The deterrence model that the Trump administration had built out was the right one. And when you demonstrate weakness and the absence of resolve, you invite these kinds of coercive activities from our adversaries all across the world.
The lefties are marveling about how even Russian leader Putin has made some grand promises about how much Russia will do to clean up their environment. Pompeo found that laughable.
Yesterday they had a feel-good meeting about Putin making some fake promise about what he was going to do with the Russian environment. I mean, this is a petro-state. This is a state whose only source of revenue of any significance is fossil fuels. To think they're going to give that up is just crazy. And yet they didn't raise any of the various issues, whether it was the jailing of Navalny, whether it's the actions that are taking place in southeast Ukraine and on the Ukrainian border, or whether it's the series of threats that the Russians pose to the people in Syria and all across the world. Somehow they think this feel-good moment for climate change overrides all those, and it will not serve the American people well.
So that cleans up what most of us didn't know about recent developments on the climate change front, thanks to Mike Pompeo. I'm still reporting from just outside the citadel of world freedom. Good day. Between summer storms or winter blizzards, many areas of the country are prone to blackouts. This is why I highly recommend the Power Light Bulb.
It charges a built-in battery, and it'll detect if you have a power outage. And when it detects that, it'll activate the LED component above.
Get the Power Light Bulb for 67% off today by going to www.powerlightbulb or clicking the link below.